My son inherited $4 million from his mother. I inherited her debts. When I asked for help, my daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eye and said, "We don't associate with failures." 2 weeks later, I was 30 days away from losing the only home I'd lived in for over 25 years. And the only reason I'm not sleeping in my truck right now is because I made one phone call I swore I would never make again. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Frank Carter. I'm 62 years old, and until recently, I believed two things about my life: that I understood my wife better than anyone, and that my son would never let me fall. I was wrong about both. Marianne and I were married for 32 years. She handled the books. I handled the house, the yard, the long hours at work that paid for Ethan's college tuition, and the down payment on his first condo. We were never flashy people. We weren't the kind who took European vacations or drove brand new luxury cars. We built what we had slowly, carefully, brick by brick. Or at least I thought we did. Marianne died suddenly, an aneurysm. No warning. 1 minute she was complaining about the rising cost of groceries, the next she was gone. Grief is a strange thing. It numbs you just enough to survive the first few days, then slowly begins to sharpen every memory like a blade. 3 days after the funeral, I sat in a leather chair across from our estate attorney. Ethan sat beside me. His wife Lauren sat on his other side legs, crossed fingers laced neatly over a designer handbag that cost more than my first car. The attorney cleared his throat and began reading the will. To my son Ethan Carter, I leave $4 million from my investment accounts, as well as the commercial rental properties on Maple and 8th Street. I remember the way the words hung in the air. $4 million. I hadn't known the number. I knew Marianne invested. I didn't know it had grown like that. Ethan blinked hard, stunned. Lauren squeezed his arm, not in comfort, in triumph. Then the attorney continued. To my husband, Frank Carter, I leave the family residence. He shall also assume responsibility for any outstanding liabilities in my name. Outstanding liabilities. I felt the shift in the room before I understood it. What kind of liabilities? I asked. The attorney glanced down at the folder. There are several personal loans, a home equity line of credit, and credit card balances, totaling approximately $386,000. My ears rang. $386,000. That can't be right, I said quietly. The house isn't worth that. It appraises at $265,000, the attorney replied. Lauren inhaled sharply, then masked it with a polite expression. Ethan stared at the table. So I inherit a house underwater, I said slowly, and nearly $400,000 in debt. The attorney nodded. Silence pressed in on all of us. Well, Ethan finally said, clearing his throat, we'll figure something out. But his eyes flicked toward Lauren before he finished the sentence. We left the office in a daze. In the parking lot, Lauren was the first to speak. This is complicated, she said. We had plans for that money. I looked at her. Plans. A larger house. We've been outgrowing the condo, and Ethan's been thinking about leaving his job to start something of his own. Ethan nodded weakly. It's not that we don't care, Dad, he added. It's just, that's a lot. $386,000 was a lot. $4 million was apparently plans. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table with Marianne's files spread out in front of me. Statements, notices, letters stamped final warning in red ink. She'd opened credit lines I didn't know existed. Loans tied to investment gambles that must have gone bad. I felt like I was reading the life of a stranger. Had she been scared, embarrassed? Did she think she'd fix it before I ever found out? Or did she simply trust that I would handle it after she was gone? The next morning, the bank called. Mr. Carter, the woman said in a measured voice, we need to discuss the delinquency on the home equity line. If the account is not brought current within 30 days, foreclosure proceedings may begin. 30 days. I stared at the wall after the call ended. I'd built the deck in our backyard with my own hands. I'd planted the oak tree the year Ethan was born. I'd fixed the roof twice. That house wasn't just wood and drywall. It was every version of my life layered into one place. I called Ethan that afternoon. We need to talk, I said. He came over an hour later. With Lauren. I should have known then that this wasn't going to be a conversation between father and son, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. Because I still believed that blood meant something. And I still believed that my son would never let me drown. I was about to learn just how expensive that belief would be. Ethan walked into the house like a guest. That was the first thing I noticed. He didn't head for the kitchen the way he used to, didn't open the fridge without asking, didn't loosen his tie and sigh the way he did when he was still living here after college. He stood in the living room with his hands in his pockets, scanning the place as if it already belonged to someone else. Lauren followed 2 steps behind him, heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor I'd installed myself. "Dad," Ethan said carefully. "You sounded stressed on the phone?" "I am," I replied. I gestured for them to sit. They chose the couch. I took the armchair opposite them, Marianne's old spot. "I spoke to the bank," I began. "They're giving me 30 days before they start foreclosure proceedings." Lauren's expression tightened, not in sympathy, in calculation. And she asked, "And I don't have $386,000 sitting in my back pocket?" Silence. "I'm not asking for charity," I continued. "I'm asking for help. A loan. Something structured. We can involve an attorney. We can draw up terms. You've got $4 million sitting in accounts that were built with family money." Ethan shifted. "Dad, that's not entirely accurate." "Isn't it?" I asked. Lauren leaned forward, hands clasped neatly. "Frank," she said in a tone that might have passed for kind if I didn't hear the steel under it, that money was left to Ethan. Specifically. Marianne made her intentions very clear. "Your wife left you the house," she added. "That's not nothing." "It's worth less than the debt attached to it," I said. "Well," she replied lightly, "then perhaps it's time to downsize." Downsize. As if she were suggesting I trade in a sedan for a compact. "This is your home," Ethan said weakly. "Maybe you could sell it before it gets to foreclosure. Cut your losses." "My losses?" I asked quietly. Ethan swallowed. Lauren's patience began to thin. "Frank, we have plans for that money. We're not sitting on it like a pile of cash. We're investing, expanding, building something. And helping your father avoid foreclosure doesn't count as building something," I asked. She held my gaze without blinking. "Ethan has worked hard to get where he is." I almost laughed. "Worked hard for 5 years. He showed up late to your mother's rental properties and left early to play golf with his friends." "That's unfair," Ethan snapped, color rising in his cheeks. "What's unfair," I said, "is that I'm asking for help from my own son, and I'm being treated like I'm applying for a loan at a bank." Lauren exhaled sharply. "Because that's exactly what you're doing," she said. "You're asking for access to funds that are not yours." Something in my chest tightened. "I raised you," I said, looking at Ethan. "I paid your tuition. I co-signed your first apartment lease. I helped you get through that mess with your student loans. And now I'm asking for structured help, and you're talking about access to funds?" Lauren stood up. "I think this conversation is getting emotional." "Good," I said. "It should be." She stepped closer to Ethan and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, we talked about this." He nodded but wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad," he said quietly, "we can't jeopardize our future. Not for this. Not for this." "For what?" I asked. "For me?" Lauren's voice cut in before he could answer. "We don't associate with failures." The words were calm, measured, almost bored. But they hit like a slap. I felt the air leave my lungs. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. She didn't flinch. "You didn't know about the debt. You didn't protect yourself. You didn't pay attention. That's not our responsibility." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Lauren, in minor third manana." "She's right," she said firmly. "We can't let other people's financial mistakes drag us down." Other people. I looked at my son. "Do you agree with her?" He hesitated. "That's not what she meant. That's not what I asked." Silence. That silence told me everything. I stood up slowly. "You know," I said, "when you were 8 years old and broke your arm falling off that bike, I sat beside your hospital bed for 12 hours. I didn't ask whose fault it was. I didn't calculate the cost." "That's different," Lauren said quickly. "No," I replied. "It's exactly the same." She reached for her purse. "This is going nowhere." Ethan stood up too. "Dad, maybe we need space." "Space," I repeated. "Yes, this is a lot." Lauren's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at it, then looked at me. "I'm going to block your number for a while," she said casually. "Until things calm down. We can't keep having conversations like this." Block. "You're blocking me?" I asked. "It's temporary," Ethan muttered. Lauren was already tapping her screen. "There," she said. "That's healthier." They walked toward the door. "Ethan," I said. He paused but didn't turn fully. "If you walk out of this house right now without offering real help," I said, "don't expect me to pretend nothing happened later." He hesitated. Lauren opened the door. We'll talk when emotions settle, she said. The door closed behind them. I stood there for a long time. The house felt quieter than it ever had after Marianne died. That evening, I found a certified letter wedged into the mailbox. Notice of default. 21 days. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter, the one Marianne and I had picked out together. I tried to picture strangers standing here, opening cabinets, measuring rooms. For the first time in my life, I felt something close to humiliation. Not because I was in debt, but because I had asked my own son for help and been called a failure. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the garage with the old toolbox I hadn't opened in years. And buried at the bottom under faded manuals and rusted screws, I found something I never thought I'd need again. A business card. Caldwell Development Group. Jack Caldwell. I stared at it for a long time. Then I picked up my phone. I turned the business card over in my hands like it might burn me. Caldwell Development Group, Jack Caldwell, Chairman and CEO. The card was thicker than anything I would have printed for myself. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, the kind of detail that told you the man behind it didn't cut corners anymore. 15 years ago, Jack Caldwell had shown up at my door with a duffel bag and eyes that looked like someone had drained the light out of them. Now he had an office in a glass building downtown. Life has a way of tilting. I hadn't spoken to Jack in nearly a decade. Christmas cards at first, a phone call here and there, then silence, the kind that comes when two men are busy surviving their own lives. I hadn't planned on calling him. I had told myself I never would. Pride is a stubborn thing, but foreclosure is louder. I dialed the number before I could talk myself out of it. It rang twice. Caldwell Development Group, how may I direct your call? The woman's voice was polished, efficient. Yes, I said, suddenly aware of how small I sounded. I'd like to speak to Jack Caldwell. It's personal. And your name? I hesitated. Frank Carter. There was a pause, not long, but long enough. One moment, please. I waited, staring at the oil stain on the garage floor that had never quite come out. Then I heard his voice. Frank. It was older, deeper, but unmistakable. Yeah, I said, it's me. A silence fell between us, thick with years. Well, he said, finally, warmth creeping into his tone. I'll be damned. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. How have you been, he asked. I've been better. Another pause. What's going on? That question almost broke me. Men our age don't cry easily. We swallow it. We tighten our jaw. We change the subject. But something in his voice, steady, familiar, made the words come out. Marianne passed, I said. The line went quiet. Jesus, Frank, I'm sorry. Yeah. You okay? No. I don't know why that honesty surprised even me. He didn't rush to fill the silence. What do you need, he asked. Straight to it. I stared at the toolbox. I'm in trouble, I said. Financial, there's debt, a lot of it. It's in my name now. The house is on the line. How much, he asked, tone shifting from friend to businessman in a heartbeat. 386. 1,000 Hammersureningwonen or Domon. Yeah. That it is, I almost laughed. That's everything to me. He exhaled slowly. Where are you? At home. I'll be there in 2 hours. You don't have to. I know, he said. I'm coming anyway. The line clicked dead. I sat there for a long time after the call ended. Memories crept in whether I wanted them to or not. 15 years earlier, Jack had been a different man. Back then, he and I worked adjacent contracts on a commercial development project. He was ambitious, charismatic, too trusting. When the market collapsed, his company folded fast. Partners pulled out. Investors vanished. His wife left within months. Took the kids with her. He showed up at my door in December. Snow falling, jacket too thin, pride shattered. I don't have anywhere else, he'd said. Marianne had looked at me from the kitchen doorway, and I'd stepped aside. Guest room's empty, I told him. He stayed 6 weeks. 6 weeks of early mornings where he stared at his coffee like it held answers. 6 weeks of long talks in the garage while I pretended to fix things. 6 weeks of me reminding him, sometimes firmly, that he wasn't done yet. You made mistakes, I'd told him once. That's not the same thing as being a mistake. He'd looked at me like I'd handed him oxygen. I helped him line up a small site supervisor job through an old contact. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. The night before he moved out, he stood in my driveway, hands in his pockets. "I won't forget this," he said. "You don't owe me anything," I replied. "If you ever need me," he said quietly, "you call." I had laughed. Let's hope I never do. Life has a sense of humor. 2 hours later, I heard it. Engines. Not one. Several. Low synchronized. I walked to the front window. 6 black SUVs turned onto my street in a slow, deliberate line. My neighbor across the road stepped out onto his porch squinting. The vehicles rolled to a stop in front of my house like something out of a political convoy. Doors opened in sequence. Drivers stepped out first. Then the rear door of the middle SUV opened, and Jack Caldwell stepped onto the pavement. He was broader now, hair fully silver, suit cut so precisely it might as well have been armor. But when he looked up and saw me standing behind the glass, his expression softened. He lifted a hand in a small, almost shy wave. I opened the door. We stood facing each other for a moment. Then he pulled me into a hug. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just firm. "You look tired," he said. "I am." He glanced at the house behind me. "Let's fix that." He stepped inside like he'd never left. The kitchen smelled faintly of stale coffee and old paperwork. I laid the folders on the table. He skimmed them fast, faster than I expected. "This isn't catastrophic," he said. "It feels catastrophic. That's because you're standing alone in it." He pulled out his phone. "Give me your bank's contact." "You don't have to." He looked at me. "Frank, let me." I nodded slowly. He dialed someone and spoke in calm, clipped tones I barely recognized. Numbers, terms, phrases like bridge resolution and asset liquidity. I caught one sentence clearly. "Prepare to clear the full outstanding balance." My heart stuttered. Before I could respond, I heard something else. A car pulling up behind the SUVs. I glanced through the window. A silver BMW. "Ethan's." Jack followed my gaze. "Expecting company?" he asked. "No." The BMW door opened. Lauren stepped out first, and I suddenly understood. Word travels fast when money moves. Jack straightened his jacket. "Good," he said quietly. "Let's have a conversation." Lauren froze the moment she saw the vehicles. Not just paused, froze. One heel half off the pavement, her posture stiffening as her eyes flicked from one SUV to the next. The drivers stood in a loose formation, suits crisp, faces unreadable. The kind of men who didn't check their phones or look around nervously. They waited. Ethan stepped out of the BMW more slowly, confusion creasing his face. He took in the scene the way someone tries to solve a puzzle that shouldn't exist. "Dad," he called, his voice uncertain. I stayed where I was, just inside the doorway. Jack stepped forward before I could answer. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly. Lauren turned toward him, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, we're here to see Frank." Jack nodded once. "You are?" She blinked. "And you are?" "Jack Caldwell." The name landed like a drop plate. Ethan's eyes widened a fraction. Lauren's brows knit together, gears visibly turning as she searched her memory for context. I could almost hear it click when she connected the dots, the development signs she'd seen around town, the headlines, the donor plaques. "Oh," she said, suddenly brighter. "Of course, Jack Caldwell." Jack tilted his head. "Do I know you?" Lauren laughed lightly. No. I mean, I've heard of you. We're Frank's family." "I know," Jack replied. "You must be Ethan." Ethan straightened instinctively. "Yes, sir." Jack shook his hand, firm, brief. "And you are?" Jack asked, turning back to Lauren. "Lauren," she said, extending her hand. "Ethan's wife." Jack glanced at her hand, then back to her face. "Right," he said without taking it. An awkward silence settled. Lauren recovered quickly. "We didn't realize Frank had company." "He called me," Jack said. "I came." Ethan looked between us. "Dad, what's going on?" Jack answered for me. "We're resolving a situation." Lauren's eyes sharpened. "Resolving?" "Yes," Jack said calmly. "The debt." Her posture shifted. Alert now. Interested. "The bank was informed," Jack continued. "The outstanding balance will be cleared today. Foreclosure proceedings are canceled." Ethan exhaled in relief. Lauren smiled real this time. "Oh, that's wonderful," she said. "Frank, we were just coming by to check on you." I met her gaze. "Were you?" She didn't miss a beat. "Of course. Family looks out for each other." Jack's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. Funny, he said. That's not what I heard. Lauren stiffened. Excuse me. Jack turned to Ethan. Your father asked you for help. Ethan shifted his weight. It was complicated. Was it? Jack asked mildly. Lauren stepped in. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Jack nodded. Let's clear it up then. He turned to me. Frank, he said, would you mind telling them exactly what you were told? My chest tightened. Old instincts told me to soften it, to protect my son, to make it easier. But something about Jack's presence made lying unnecessary. When I asked for help, I said slowly, your wife told me you don't associate with failures. Lauren's smile vanished. That's not... Jack raised a hand. Is that accurate? He asked, eyes locked on Lauren. She glanced at Ethan. He said nothing. I may have phrased it poorly, she said carefully, but we were under a lot of stress. Jack nodded again. Understandable. Money does that. He stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to command attention. Let me explain something, he said. 15 years ago, I stood where Frank is standing now. Broke. Ashamed. One bad month away from losing everything. Lauren swallowed. Frank didn't ask what I'd done wrong, Jack continued. He didn't calculate the risk of helping me. He opened his door. I felt heat behind my eyes. He reminded me that mistakes don't define a man, Jack said. They reveal him. Ethan stared at the floor. So when I hear that a man like Frank Carter was called a failure, Jack said quietly, by people who inherited wealth they didn't build. Lauren bristled. That money was left to us legally. No one's disputing that, Jack replied. What's being discussed is character. Silence stretched thin. Jack straightened. Frank's debts are gone, he said. He will not lose his home. He will not need to beg for assistance again. Lauren's voice softened. We're glad to hear that. Truly. Jack looked at her. Frank will also be staying with me for a while. Ethan looked up sharply. Staying. Yes, Jack said, until he decides what comes next. Lauren's lips parted, then closed. That won't be necessary, she said. We can help now. I laughed quietly. Everyone turned toward me. You had your chance, I said. Ethan flinched. Dad, I didn't ask for everything, I continued. I asked for a bridge. You burned it. Jack placed a hand on my shoulder. This conversation is over, he said. Lauren's face flushed. You can't just... Jack met her gaze, his expression calm but unyielding. I can, he said, and I am. He opened the door wider. Ethan hesitated, torn. I'll call you, he said quietly. I know, I replied. Lauren walked out, first heels sharp against the pavement. Ethan followed, shoulders slumped. The BMW pulled away. The SUVs remained. Jack exhaled slowly. You okay? He asked. I nodded, though my hands trembled. For the first time in weeks, I said, I think I am. Jack smiled faintly. Good, he said, because we're not done yet. The SUVs didn't leave right away. They idled quietly at the curb, engines humming low and steady like a heartbeat outside the house. Jack stood beside me in the kitchen sleeves of his suit jacket, rolled back just slightly as he reviewed the last of the paperwork. It's done, he said, finally setting the folder down. Wires confirmed. The bank will show zero balance by tomorrow morning. I stared at the table. $386,000. Gone. Just like that. Jack, I said, my voice catching in a way I didn't like. I don't even know what to say. You don't say anything, he replied. You let it stand. He poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter like he had 15 years ago, except now he filled the space differently. Back then, he'd taken up space like someone trying not to. Now he owned it. You saved my life, he said quietly. This is just accounting. I shook my head. I gave you a spare room and a pep talk. You gave me dignity, he corrected. That's more expensive. The engines outside finally cut off one by one. The drivers remained in place. Why are they still here? I asked. Jack glanced toward the window. Because I told them to be. For what? In case this gets louder. I frowned. Louder. Right on cue, my phone buzzed on the table. Ethan. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. Yeah, one then. Dad, he said, breath tight. We need to talk. We already did. No, I mean, privately. I glanced at Jack. Then come back, I said. They're still there, Ethan muttered. They're not stopping you. There was a pause. I'll be there in 5. When the BMW pulled up again this time, only Ethan stepped out. Lauren stayed in the passenger seat. Jack noticed. Interesting, he murmured. Ethan walked to the door slower than before. He knocked this time. I opened it. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, just diminished. Can we talk inside? He asked. I stepped aside. Jack didn't leave. Ethan glanced at him uncertainly. It's fine, Jack said calmly. I won't interrupt. We sat at the kitchen table again, the same 3 chairs occupied hours earlier. Only this time the power dynamic had shifted. I didn't know you'd call him, Ethan said. I didn't either, I replied. He rubbed his face with both hands. Lauren didn't mean it like that. She said it exactly like that. She gets protective, he insisted. Of what I asked, money she didn't earn. He winced. That's not fair. Isn't it? He was quiet. She grew up different, he said finally. Her family didn't have much. She's afraid of losing what we have. So she pushes others off the boat first, I said. That's not what she... Ethan. He stopped. When I asked for help, you looked at her before you answered. He stared at the table. You're my son, I said softly. You're not her shadow. Silence stretched between us. I didn't want conflict, he admitted. Conflict is sometimes the cost of integrity. He swallowed. I thought you'd figure something out, he said. I did. He glanced toward the window where the SUVs remained parked like silent witnesses. Do you hate me? He asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. No, I said, I'm disappointed. That hit harder. His shoulders sagged. I didn't think it would go this far. It always goes this far, I replied. Little compromises, small silences, they stack up. Jack stepped forward slightly but didn't speak. Ethan looked at him. You think I'm weak, he said. Jack met his eyes. I think you're undecided, he replied evenly. And that's more dangerous. Ethan's jaw tightened. I love my wife. No one said you shouldn't, I said. But love doesn't require blindness. He stood abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the SUVs. You cleared the debt, he asked. Yes. All of it. Yes. He turned back to me. So you don't need anything from us. I held his gaze. No. He nodded slowly. Something shifted in his expression then. Not relief, not resentment. Something closer to realization. She'll want to come in, he said. I know. Don't let her. I won't. He hesitated. Dad, I'm sorry. The words were small, but they were real. For what I asked. For not standing up when I should have. I studied his face. You don't apologize to erase, I said. You apologize to change. He nodded once. I'll figure it out. I hope you do. He walked toward the door. Ethan, I called. He paused. You don't lose your father because of money, I said. You lose him because of choices. He absorbed that. Then he left. The BMW pulled away for the second time that day. Jack stepped beside me. You handled that well, he said. I don't feel like I did. You didn't yell. You didn't beg. You didn't gloat. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. That's strength. I looked around the kitchen, the worn cabinets, the scratch on the floor, where Ethan had dragged a toy truck decades ago. I don't know what comes next, I admitted. Jack smiled slightly. I do. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. Inside was a set of documents. Trust paperwork, he said. Asset protection, title restructuring, retirement planning. I blinked. You've been busy. I've been prepared. For what? Wanimam. For the day you finally let someone help you properly. I exhaled slowly. Come stay with me, he said. Not because you have to, because you can. I looked at him. You don't owe me that. He smiled. No, he said, but I choose it. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn I had mowed 100 times. For the first time in weeks, the future didn't look like a cliff. It looked like a door. And for once, I wasn't the one knocking. I didn't pack much. 2 suitcases, a duffel bag, a framed photograph of Marianne and me from our 25th anniversary, back when we still looked at each other like the future was something we'd conquer together. I hesitated before placing it in the bag. In the end, I brought it anyway. History doesn't vanish just because life moves forward. Jack's estate sat on the edge of town past a winding stretch of road lined with tall pines. Iron gates opened before the lead SUV even slowed down. The property wasn't flashy in the way Lauren liked to be flashy. It was controlled, intentional. expansive without being loud. The house itself was built of stone and glass wide windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. It looked like something out of an architectural magazine, but warmer. Lights glowed softly inside, landscaping manicured but not sterile. "You don't have to be impressed," Jack said as I stepped out of the vehicle. "I'm not impressed," I replied honestly. "I'm surprised." He smiled. "That's better." Inside the ceilings were high but not echoing. Wood beams, deep leather chairs, shelves lined with books that looked read, not staged. "Guest wing is yours," he said, motioning toward a corridor off the main hall. "As long as you need it." "How long is that?" "As long as it takes for you to remember you're not drowning." The guest suite was larger than my entire upstairs at home. Private bath, sitting area, windows overlooking a stretch of green that disappeared into trees. I set my bags down slowly. "You sure about this?" I asked. Jack leaned against the doorway. "Frank, I built all this," he said quietly, and half the time it echoes. That night we ate in a smaller dining room near the kitchen. Not a banquet table, just 2 plates steak and roasted vegetables and a bottle of red wine I couldn't pronounce. "Your son came back," Jack said after a while. "Yeah." "You think he meant the apology?" "I think he meant it in that moment," I replied. "Whether he means it tomorrow is the real test." Jack nodded. "People reveal themselves when there's nothing to gain." "Or nothing to lose," I added. We fell into a comfortable silence after that. Later in the guest suite, I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. For weeks, sleep had come in shallow bursts. That night it came heavy. The next morning I woke before sunrise, old habits. I found Jack in the kitchen already dressed, reading financial reports on a tablet. "Coffee?" he asked. "Please." He handed me a mug and leaned back against the counter. "You're not obligated to stay," he said. "You know that." "I know. You can sell your house, keep it, rent it. We'll go over options this week." I nodded. "I don't want to run from it," I said. "Then don't," he replied. "Just don't fight alone." That afternoon, Ethan texted. Not called, texted. "Can we meet just us?" I showed the message to Jack. "You going?" he asked. "Yes." "Good." We met at a diner halfway between his condo and Jack's place. Ethan looked tired, less polished. "No, Lauren." "She didn't want me to come," he said after we ordered coffee. "That tracks." He stared at his hands. "She says you're manipulating me against her." I almost smiled. "And what do you think?" "I think," he hesitated, "I think I didn't handle this right." "That's an understatement." He winced. "She grew up afraid of being broke," he said. "Her dad lost everything when she was a kid. They bounced from apartment to apartment. So she learned to grab before someone else could." I said, "Yeah." "And you wouldn't mind shoe?" He looked up at me then. "I learned that you always fix things." That landed harder than anything else. "I'm not supposed to be the fixer forever," I said quietly. He nodded. "I know." Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't hostile this time. "What happens now?" he asked. "That's up to you," I replied. "You want a relationship with me? Show up without her deciding the terms." He swallowed. "That's going to be complicated." "Then decide what kind of man you want to be." He looked away. When I returned to Jack's house, he didn't ask for a report. He simply poured 2 glasses of bourbon and handed me one. "You look lighter," he observed. "I feel clearer," I said. "That's different than lighter." "Yeah," I admitted. Over the next week, we met with attorneys, structured my finances properly, created a trust, adjusted titles, made sure no one, not banks, not relatives, could corner me again. "You're building armor," I said at one point. "No," Jack corrected. "We're building stability." Lauren tried to visit 3 days later. She didn't get past the gate. Jack's security called inside first. "Mrs. Carter is requesting entry." Jack looked at me. "You're calm." I thought about her words in my kitchen. "We don't associate with failures." "Tell her I'm not receiving visitors," I said. Jack relayed the message. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Unknown number." I answered. Frank Lauren's voice said, smooth and careful, "I just wanted to say I think things got out of hand." They did, I agreed. We were under pressure. So was I. She exhaled slowly. "We can move past this." "Can we?" I asked. "Of course." I paused. "Respect isn't a switch," I said. "It's a habit." She didn't respond. "Take care, Lauren," I added and hung up. Jack watched me set the phone down. You feel vindicated, he asked. I shook my head. No. What do you feel? Free. He nodded once. That's better. It's strange how quiet a man's mind becomes once fear leaves it. For weeks, every thought I had was tied to survival numbers, deadlines, the sound of the mailbox opening like a verdict. When that pressure lifted, I expected relief to feel explosive, victorious. It didn't. It felt steady. Jack and I sat on the back terrace one evening, the sky bruised purple with sunset. The property stretched out before us, rolling lawn trees moving gently in the breeze, the kind of calm you can't fake. You're different, Jack said. How? You're standing straighter. I hadn't noticed. I think I said slowly, I spent most of my life believing my value was tied to what I provided. Money, stability, solutions. And now, it came out. Now I know it's tied to what I allow. He nodded thoughtfully. A week after Lauren's failed visit, Ethan came alone again. This time he didn't text. He just showed up at the gate and waited until security called inside. You want to see him, Jack asked. Yes. Ethan looked around as he stepped onto the terrace, taking in the scale of everything. Not with envy this time, with something closer to humility. Nice place, he muttered. It's Jack's, I replied, not mine. Jack stood, extended his hand. Ethan. Mr. Caldwell. Jack, he corrected. They shook hands. I'll give you 2 space, Jack said, stepping inside. Ethan sat across from me. I talked to Lauren, he began. And she thinks you're trying to replace us. I let that sit between us. Are you? He asked quietly. No. He nodded slowly. She doesn't like not being in control. That's not uncommon, I said. He rubbed the back of his neck. She said if I keep coming here alone, it sends the wrong message. And what message would that be? That I'm choosing you over her? I leaned back in my chair. You're not choosing between people, I said. You're choosing between behaviors. He stared at the table. I don't want to lose my marriage, he admitted. I don't want to lose my son, I replied. Silence settled. But I won't beg for access to you, I added. He flinched slightly. I know, he said. I've been thinking about that. About what? How easy it was for me to let her speak for both of us. I didn't interrupt. I didn't even argue, he said. I just stayed quiet. That's a choice, I reminded him. I know. He looked up at me, then eyes clearer than I'd seen in weeks. I'm starting therapy, he said. That surprised me. Lauren doesn't like it, he added. Does she know? She will. I nodded slowly. That's a start. He leaned back. I don't know what this looks like long term, he admitted, but I don't want to be the guy who walks away when things get hard. You already were, I said calmly. He swallowed. I know. We sat in silence again, but it didn't feel hostile. It felt honest. Dad, he said finally, I'm sorry. Not because you don't need the money anymore, but because I forgot who you are. That one landed differently. I'm still the same man, I said. No, he replied quietly. You're stronger than I thought. I almost smiled. That's because you only ever saw me fixing things quietly. He stood to leave. I'll keep coming, he said. Then come, I replied, without conditions. After he left, Jack returned to the terrace. Well, he asked. He's figuring it out. Slowly. Yeah. Jack poured us each a drink. You don't look angry, he observed. I'm not. Not even at Lauren. I considered that. No, I said. She showed me something I needed to see. And what was that? Es ist. That love without respect isn't love, it's dependency. Jack lifted his glass slightly. To clarity. We clinked quietly. Months passed. I didn't move back into my house right away. Instead, I rented it out properly at market rate, with contracts reviewed and structured through the trust Jack helped me build. The property that once felt like a burden became an asset. Ethan kept visiting. Not every week, but consistently. Lauren came once more. This time she didn't smile. I didn't mean what I said, she told me plainly. I know, I replied. She blinked. You do? Yes, you meant something worse. She didn't argue. I was afraid she admitted. Of being poor? Yes. I studied her face. Fear explains behavior, I said. It doesn't excuse it. She nodded faintly. I don't know how to fix this. You don't, I replied. You change. She left without another word. I didn't feel triumph watching her walk away. I felt distance, and distance I realized was the real gift. 1 year later, I stood in Jack's office reviewing quarterly statements for the trust we'd built. The numbers were steady, predictable, secure. Jack leaned back in his chair. "You ever think about how close you were?" he asked. "Every now and then. And I'm glad I made the call." He smiled. "Me too." I looked out the window at the city skyline. "I used to think the best revenge would be proving them wrong," I said. "And now, Iwainawi. Now I know the best revenge is being untouchable. Not untouchable because of money. Untouchable because of boundaries. Because of clarity. Because I no longer needed approval to feel steady. If you've ever been treated like you were disposable, if you've ever been told you were a burden or a failure, I want you to remember something. You are not defined by the moment someone withdraws their support. You are defined by what you do next. Sometimes that means swallowing your pride and making the call. Sometimes that means letting people walk away. And sometimes it means realizing your worth was never up for negotiation. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I read everyone. We share stories like this every day about strength, second chances, and the kind of dignity no one can take from you. Subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one. Let's keep walking this road together.